Tonight we're very happy to have with us Robin Lumsden and her new cookbook, the Belcour Cookbook, Jamaican, French, and Chinese family recipes for entertaining. But to introduce Robin, we have a very special guest. Ms. Wendy Hart is the president of the American Friends of Jamaica, a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting Jamaican charitable organizations and social initiatives targeted at improving the lives of Jamaicans through systematic development in the areas of education, healthcare, and economic development. She earned her BA in law from Cambridge University and an MBA in finance from Columbia Business School. Please give her a warm Books and Books welcome, Ms. Wendy Hart.
If I've printed this large enough, I won't need the glasses. We'll see. Welcome, everyone, to the Florida book launch of Belcour, the cookbook. I see a lot of familiar faces here, so you may know already a lot of the things I talk about. But for full disclosure, you should know that Robin and I are third cousins, which of course means we're close family. That's the case for many third cousins in Jamaica, but our mothers and their sisters, 7 of them in total, grew up together on the same street in Kingston, Bamboo Avenue. They were known collectively as the Deno Girls, and as kids running in and out of each other's homes, they were part of the start of this tradition of large family gatherings. I was so thrilled to be given my first copy of Belcour last Christmas. Filled with beautiful photography, with easy-to-access recipes, singing with the flavors of Jamaica and China, and full of the blessings of the joy of family and friends. This is apparent right from the acknowledgments page of the book. My sisters, cousins, aunts, and sisters-in-law. It is a book that is as much about family as it is about cooking. But for those of us who love to cook, isn't that what it's about? All of those ingredients get stirred in with a lot of love, which gets shared as you sit around the table, and then stories and lives are shared, and memories are built. For those of us raised in Jamaica, the memories rush in as you read Robin's words. I love to explore the mountain trails, looking for mountain witches, hunting for wild gooseberries, and at night capturing peeny-wallies in glass jars. I immediately felt transported to my own grandparents' mountain home. For others, it will have you buying your airplane ticket or grabbing your pans and a recipe from the book so that you too can be transported to Jamaica, one way or the other. Because of course, while the stories and the photos would have themselves been enough, we need to get to the recipes and to start cooking. Having raised my children in Miami, I always bemoan they are not Jamaican enough. But their favorite dinner is oxtail with spinners, or red pea soup with spinners. And finally, I was able to deliver them right here. Her husband, Michael, and her boys are very lucky. So the first and best advice I have for you is add some Belcour preserves to your kitchen cabinet. My personal favorites include the honey mustard pepper sauce and the guava preserves. You will never be able to eat lamb again until you use Robin's recipe on page 30, honey jerk leg of lamb with guava glaze. When Robin asked me to introduce her, I was excited, not only because I love this cookbook, but it was a chance for me to say publicly what a huge fan of hers I am. Robin is truly a Renaissance woman, chef, of course, entrepreneur, writer. Buy the book for the recipes, and you'll love it for its stories. If you're not a friend of Robin's on Facebook, I encourage you to do so. See if she'll accept you. She has the only posts that are about worth reading in this medium. She has stuff that's meaningful to say, won't be all these videos, guess what happened next. I encourage you to do so. I hope that she would add to many of her jobs that of blogger. But today, I am happy to introduce her as author.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out. I'm very emotional because It's so lovely to see so many friends, and the book is a tribute to my family. As you can tell, there are a lot of us here tonight, and this book wouldn't have been written without the amazing family that I have. Wendy didn't tell you, but I was a big fan of her grandmother, Aunt Edith. Aunt Edith was a woman after my own heart. I was born on her birthday. I so admired her. She was an amazing matriarch, and she liked to drink scotch, walk around the garden with her dogs, just like me. But Wendy, I'm also a huge fan of you and your aunts. They're like the most amazing people. So I see we're 8 o'clock Jamaica time, 8:30. And let me see if I can find my notes. There's so much more to Jamaican food than jerk. And that was one of the reasons I wrote this book. I also wrote it to try and preserve some of my family history and the history of our country. And I felt so much of it was going to be lost. And I think it's important for all of us. Jamaica is such a diverse country. I look in the crowd, and Tony Hendricks, the comedian, said I should say, I see some salt and pepper and even curry. He also told me to say, and we have the Consul General here today, so I don't know, but did you know that Jamaica was quite a dangerous place? We eat ackee. Our national dish is ackee and saltfish, and we also eat bami, and both of these can kill you if they're eaten raw. Anyway, memories and meals are intertwined, and for me, food is my trigger to memories. I remember my first memory of food was sticking my hand in a boiling pot. There was boiling clothes, but I thought they were boiling corn. I got a 3rd-degree burn for that. My second memory was my 9th birthday, when I asked my mother to make, she asked me, what do I want for my birthday? And she was stupid enough to ask me that, and I said Peking duck. She spent the entire day blow drying the damn duck. Okay, I entitled the book The Belcour for many reasons. One of them was my mother was a huge influence on me, and she died in 92 of cancer. And she was my age, 56. And one of her best friends said to us, why don't you write a book about your mother and publish some of her photographs? And why don't you call the book The Beautiful Heart? Well, Belcour is a French word for beautiful court or beautiful heart. So I'm going to start tonight by reading a few things from the 5 sections of the book. I did the book in 5 eras of our lives, and also with the food that we enjoyed and the family places that I remember them. So in 98, Mike and I moved back to Belcour. It's such a beautiful place, and we also started a business there because it was a 7-acre farm, and my husband said, we need to actually make this a working farm. So I quickly got some bees and planted a lot of orange trees, and Wendy's aunt actually gave us some Ortoniques, and before you know it, the place was so populated by flowers and bees. And so I started storing up a few things in my kitchen, and people seemed to like them, and neighbors would offer to buy them. And so that has morphed into, from a cottage industry into, we hope, an export business. In fact, we're going to the Fancy Food tomorrow for about the 5th time, this time in our importer's booth. Okay, so I begin with a small reading, short reading from Belcour. And the house is an old wooden structure, originally built in the 19th century, plantation style. And In the morning, as the sun crests the mounting ridges, the bees make their beeline into the mist, the bird song is in full throat, and the red flowers of the flame of the forest or the ebony trees can be seen dotting the valley. Chirping of crickets and whistling of frogs fill the night. As I sit on the veranda each morning with a cup of Blue Mountain coffee in hand, I revel in the tranquil yet beauty of the valley. Belcour has borne witness to many seasons of our lives. My parents love this place and lived happily there for 25 years. Oh my God, we have nearly lived there 25 years. Mike and I got married in the garden in '86, and my sister also in 2010. Both my father and my mother are laid to rest in the garden by the gazebo under the watchful eyes of the bamboo. Despite our sense of proprietorship, I am aware that we too are only custodians in this sweet sanctuary for a brief period of time. The next part I'm going to read is a bit about my grandparents, because they were amazing role models. And I have to say, since Wendy's here, that I distinctly remember walking over to their home, because we actually were very fortunate to live in this unusual enclave called Bamboo Avenue and Bamboo Pen. Our families were originally of French extraction, and they were very close, as Wendy said, and I used to tag along when we went over to Auntie Edith's house, and while they drank scotch and stuff on the veranda, I would be lost among Uncle George's gloxinias in his greenhouse or rose garden. So this is about my grandmother, Miss Deno. My grandmother, Dorothy Dew, or Mimi, as she was affectionately called, spent most of her childhood in Santiago de Cuba. With Mimi, when Mimi became a 17-year-old debutante, she was sent to stay in Jamaica with my grandmother, Beatrice Deno, known as Mama B, who was also a distant cousin of my grandfather's Peter Deno. Peter Deno, a shy young man of 19, clapped eyes on the beautiful Mimi and declared that he was going to marry her. After a brief courtship, my grandparents were married in 1933. The newly married couple moved into Bamapen, and my mother was actually born in the house. I remember Bamapen as a child's paradise and a sanctuary to hide from hovering parents. There were 12 Bombay mangoes on the property and every other fruit imaginable. In mango season, the breeze would cause the ripe fruit to fall from the trees and burst, their luscious orange flesh oozing out as they lay on the ground, the bees feeding feverishly on their crevices. I would come home from school and eat my belly full of almost everything there, despite the warnings that these were going to give us, that the amount of fruit I ate was going to give me collywobblies or whatever. Bamboo Pen lunches were loud and boisterous affairs, with everyone squeezing around the huge mahogany table. A platter of birds that Big Peter had recently shot or fresh kingfish would arrive at the table ceremoniously, steaming rice and gunga peas, fried chicken, slices of avocado, plantains. The feast would be topped off with Bombay mangoes and a dollop of ice cream, fresh vanilla ice cream. When the decibels hit a fever pitch, Big Peter would say, "We need to blow a hole out of the ceiling." Those were the halcyon days of my childhood. I want to read a very short passage to my grandfather. Before I go on, I have to say that it always astonished me that at any given day, my grandmother could feed 20 people. My mother would just arrive. I would just call her up on a Sunday, "Mimi, can we come for lunch?" And every one of her daughters would do that. And she had 4 daughters and umpteenth grandchildren, and we would bring friends, and all of a sudden the house would be crowded with people, and Mimi didn't bat an eyelid. Now, I am very fortunate, I think, and it must be in our DNA, because all of us girls seem to have inherited that trait of being able to feed a lot of people at the drop of a hat. In fact, I have a lot of hors d'oeuvres here tonight, so I hope you're hungry, because they're from the cookbook, and we might be all taking some home. My grandfather, Big Peter, was one of my role models. In fact, he was an entrepreneur, and when he retired, I used to tag along on his walks through the garden, and he would manage to tell me where every single fruit tree came from, whether he found it in St. Elizabeth, the Guinness in St. Elizabeth, and we'd stop and we'd eat a little mango and whatever. Anyway, he also talked to me a lot about business. I was 5. And so when I grew up, I wanted to be like him. And I thought, oh, starting a manufacturing business was a piece of cake. Well, 10 years later, I am still trying to do that. Anyway, so much for youthful hubris and naivete. Big Peter grew up in an area of Kingston called Raytown, which is situated on the Kingston Harbour's waterfront. He was a sportsman and enjoyed shooting birds. I also went along with him, and going deep-sea fishing on expeditions to the Pedro Keys on his boat. Fishing was one of the passions of his life. Big Peter was not interested in school, and liked to tell the story of how he evaded school through a plan of boyish creativity. He would tie a fishing line on his big toe and fall asleep with the line hanging out the window of his room overlooking the water below. His friends would come to him early in the morning and pull the line to wake him up. He would jump through his window and into the waiting fishing dinghy called Vamp, one of many Vamps. And he headed out to sea. They'd row across the flat silver glass-like water away from his mother's jurisdiction and into the orange glow of the morning to fish all day with a drop line to catch red snapper found among the roots of the mangroves. My grandfather was totally at home on the sea. As a young girl, I often went with him on fishing excursions. I recall the salt spray tinged with the smell of diesel oil and the breaking dawn as we pulled out of the harbour. We would look back at the island from out of sea and think of how beautiful this island was when the first explorers discovered it. I have to say that Jamaica has changed a lot since then, and there is a certain nostalgia I have about Bamba Pen, because it was the center of our world at the time, and I knew that Jamaica was changing. It had to change, and I remember the exact point when I thought these halcyon days were going to go. And a lot of the reason I needed to write this book was to capture some of that. The beauty of that time and the civility and the closeness of the family. Well, as the daughters grew up, there were 4 of them. And during that time, Bama Pen was a country club. It had a tennis court and a swimming pool. And they had 4 beautiful girls and 3 cousins living next door, so just across the road. So you can imagine there were a lot of young bachelors who came along. Anyway, my mother, B, inherited her father's blue eyes and blonde hair and strong will. She was smart and forthright and an avid reader who voraciously devoured books. She became quite a feminist and an outspoken supporter of women's rights in the 1970s, when those radical views were considered revolutionary. She was also my role model, and the book was inspired by her boxes of recipes, which she kept. And I seem to have inherited them. I guess nobody wanted to move them out of the house. So she met my father at a party in the late 1950s in Jamaica. At this party, my mother Beatrice, then also known as B, perched on my father's knee and told him she was 19. My father, James Lim, known to most people as Jim, was 12 years B's senior. She was a precocious 17-year-old who at the time of their meeting was smitten by a handsome stranger from the east. Daddy said he was bitten by 2 bees that night, one that stung his skin and the other that stung his heart. Now, in those days when they announced that they were getting married, I think my grandfather was quite taken aback because most Chinese were shop owners. And he didn't quite know what to make of my father. Daddy arrived in Jamaica in 56 on a whim, or rather on the advice of a drunk in a bar. Jim had recently finished an engineering degree at Northwestern and was working in New York when his visa ran out. He was supposed to be going to the then British colony of Trinidad to stay with his Trinidadian Scottish relatives and await an immigration visa. And I have to stick a pin because the thing about it was, would you people like to come in, by the way? Please do. There are some seats. Yes, my father was born to a Scottish mother and a Chinese father. My grandfather was at the time studying medicine at the University of Edinburgh. And I never ceased to wonder how this tall Scottish lass with auburn hair picked up this short Chinaman on the beach and also went all the way across the world to live with him in Beijing, much to the chagrin and worry of her family. Now, Daddy was born in Glasgow, and after that, the family moved to Beijing because Daddy took up a job at the Peking Union Medical School, which is actually still there today. When my sister and I visited China in 2000, we actually discovered it. And I shall not stray from the point, but because he happened to be born in Glasgow on a long furlong leave or something of my grandfather, he had a British passport. So after being in America for a while, it ran out. So he was applying under the Asian quota, and obtaining a visa, as we all know, is quite a difficult and lengthy process till today. Serendipity, however, got in the way of him going to Trinidad, and the inebriated and impassioned soul who my father met in all of the gin joints in all of the towns in all of the world convinced him that Montego Bay was a place to be. Daddy was 29 at the time, and with youthful hubris, thought the world is my oyster. Later that night, he got out a map, and seeing that Montego Bay was a straight line to Trinidad, and Jamaica was also a British colony, he said, what the hell? He changed his ticket and flew to Kingston to stop over. His father nearly went ballistic. These twists of fate led Daddy to stay in Jamaica long enough to fall in love with my mother. And so I'm eternally grateful to that drunk in the bar and Daddy's propensity to take what he liked to describe as calculated risks. Now, one of the things that I think attracted Daddy to Jamaica was the fact that it was such a multiracial country, and he always said he didn't have to deny his Chinese heritage or his Scottish heritage, and he actually found a home there. And one of the themes of the book is what home means and the sense of belonging. So with my mother, he managed to create a home, and he lived there happily, never went to Trinidad, and only once with us went back to China. My mother doted on my father. She thought the world and sun set on this man. And she learned to cook Chinese food. So to please him, but more importantly, because Daddy connected to his Chinese culture through his food. And he would often tell us stories about growing up in China. And my mother embraced his heritage and because he was very proud of it. So cooking and eating Chinese food became part of our tradition. Jajangmyeon, a dish from northern China, that they called it a poor man dish or a street side, was one of our favorite dishes. It consists of pasta and pork mince cooked in black beans, and we serve it with slivered cucumbers and peanut butter sauce. It's in the book and it's divine. If you like pork, you go for it. I was delighted to discover when I went to China that this thing actually existed, because Daddy's fantastic stories were a bit too hard to comprehend. One of the things he told us was that when his mother died, unfortunately, Grandma died when he was 9 years old of a cerebral hemorrhage. That year, they were vacationing in a seaside resort called Belcour. And he had these wonderful memories of Belcour. And he said that one of the family friends or a distant cousin was head of the Chinese railroad. And they used to send a whole train for them. And they would go to this beautiful place. And it was at that place that the Japanese invaded China. I believe it was 1934 or something like that. And he never went home. He never got a chance to get any of his personal belongings. He never got a chance to revisit his home. So you can imagine how emotional it was when we actually found his home near Tiananmen Square in China. I think I'm straying from the point. When I was writing this book, I wrote so many pages, and my little sister, who is very precocious, she said, and Robin, stick on your computer. What does this have to do with food? So if I stray from the point too much, please everybody shout, and what does this have to do with food? Okay, well, the people at Belcour was his very dear family and friends. And one of them was a woman called Gamma, who, when Peggy died, Grandma Lim, and the war broke out, she actually adopted almost my father and Auntie Effie. And this intrepid woman, fled with them into the interior of China, while Grandpa went into the war and actually became head of the Red Cross in China and Surgeon General and quite a few other things. And she looked after him, and they went through India and China, actually ended up here in America. Gamma used to come and visit us all the time. She was a short, very genteel Chinese woman. I had no idea who she was at that time. And Daddy said she accepted Mommy when she started to speak to her in Chinese. But she taught my mother all the Chinese recipes that we know, and most of them are in the book that became our favorites. And we used to watch her cook, and she would chop away with a big Chinese chopper and just terrify us. But for the rest of his life, my father continued to share a strong and emotional bond with Galma and her daughters, Wei, Ming, and Betty, who also immigrated to the States. When my sisters and I were growing up, we often visited these aunts and their families in Wei's house in Westport, Connecticut. This served as a meeting place for gathering and delicious Chinese meals. Uncle Albert would bring his cold noodles. Gamma would prepare her special dishes like red cooked pork, shrimp in shells, cucumber salad, Uncle Edgar's dishes. The delicious aroma of Chinese food would fill the room, and the strange lilt of Mandarin. Gamma's grandson, Tim, and his wife, Chelsea, have kept up this tradition. In fact, we're going there tomorrow, of hosting Thanksgiving dinners, 4th of July, whatever, and whenever we are in town, we go there. These dinners are an elaborate fusion of Chinese and traditional cuisine, American cuisine. representative of the continuity of life and the family's evolving diaspora and cultural integration. Sharing these meals together and sharing memories help to preserve both important family ties and aspects of our culture that has become increasingly homogenized and forgotten with the passage of time. So I should tell you a bit about maybe the making of the book, or the making of a book was definitely a family effort. I roped in, just as I did today, all my cousins and sisters and aunts and uncles. They edited, they contributed recipes. I had a lovely and amazing team. And I think the book kind of informed itself. When I started to write, I wanted to write a cookbook. But then there was this book gestating in my mind. The book actually took 9 months, and my husband thought I'd birthed a baby. Because it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's amazing it was ever over. And just when I finished doing all the photography and all the editing of all the recipes, I realized that somehow I had to explain how jajangmyeon and saltfish and ackee ended up in the same book. That didn't occur to me. And, you know, I think I have Daddy's propensity to take these calculated risks. I'd never been an author before, and I'm now a self-published author. It's a great privilege to be one, I have to say, to fulfill a life dream. But I wanted to give my family these recipes. Although many of them had them, they had them all over the place. They had them in boxes, you know, pieces of paper. In fact, there was quite an interesting, Auntie Linda was another, my aunt, was another one of my favorite people. And she encouraged me, rather she insisted, she didn't encourage me. If anybody knows Linda, she was like, Robin, you're going to write a book. Do it. She'd send me pieces of paper. Unfortunately, she died the year I was doing the book. Anyway, after she died, which was quite a tragedy for all of us, I went to her house because she had told me that Mimi's icebox recipe was she had the original. Nobody else had the original. She did. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go and find it. And I went through and I waded through our boxes of recipes. I learned a lot of great things that day. I learned, for instance, that the pâté you're going to eat tonight was not my mother B's pâté. It was actually Auntie B's pâté, Auntie B. Kelly's pâté. And anyway, I did eventually find this recipe just as I was about to give up. There it was, a little recipe in Mimi's scroll, crab toe writing, saying icebox cake. Yes, I wanted to give the family these wonderful recipes because they are my manual and actually my go-to recipes. And every one of my family members contributed them. So you can go to any of their houses and you'll probably book up one of these recipes being served for dinner or lunch. And I'd written a prototype of the book in 2005 and given it to a lot of the family as I was a spiral bound copy. And they seemed to like it. So it was edited because there were some recipes where I forgot important ingredients like eggs. And since I can't spell at all, you know how many spelling mistakes it had. Anyway, that was the beginning of the book. And I'm actually thrilled that as I said, that I got to finish, actually, more than even doing a book. I'm actually thrilled that it actually got finished. And as I said, it was very much for me when I was writing it, it occurred to me that what I was really doing was validating my own identity and Jamaicanness. I spent a long time growing up in Jamaica as feeling I didn't belong, feeling that somehow I was sort of accidentally there. And I had my name was Lim, and constantly people would say to me, "Are you Miss Chin? But you don't look like you're Chinese." And I really wanted to have brown skin. And I would have happily traded my good hair for this anonymity in Jamaica of fitting in. So this book was very much a quest for my own identity. Who was I and where did I belong? It occurred to me that more of us need to tell our stories. We're such a mix-up of people, out of many one. Well, I like to say food, but I guess people should say out of many one. And out of many one cuisines would be my take on it. And if you think about food, food is like the cultural highway of food is so interesting. The actual, what we eat, why we eat. And if you think of Jamaican food, things like patties, which we think are one of our dishes, our meals, are actually English pasties, I believe. Hardo bread, Daddy always said, boy, this really resembles mantou bread in China. Well, when you think of it, most of the Chinese own the bakeries in Jamaica. And you could go on and on. And then there is the aspect that mackerel rundown is salted fish coming from Scandinavia, marrying an African way of cooking coconut sauce. And I think that's a bit of a metaphor for all of us, really, in Jamaica. I could say we're glorified. No, I won't. Maybe. I am a glorified mongrel. And proud of it, too. That's the new Caribbean species. It's actually the new world species. And so, in this book, I tried to celebrate my muchness, as Lewis Carroll said. I also wanted to celebrate the beautiful diversity, as Ralph Ellison said, of all of us. I don't want to talk too much longer, but I don't know if you have any questions. The actual aspect of the book that interested me was meeting my relatives for the first time. I actually didn't even know Gama's name. I called her grandson, and I said to him, Chris, what was Grandma's real name? Grandma's, and which we actually almost called her Grandma. And he said, CM Chen. And he said, I'll send you her wedding certificate. The wedding certificate showed that she was actually married in London. Her husband was studying engineering there. That's quite fascinating. Actually, I learned a bit too much information because he did say to me, Robin, we could have been more than very, very, very distant cousins, because I think, there was a period there when Grandpa's had lost his wife, and Grandma was in the interior of China with all these children looking after. Grandpa had set up a field hospital there. And, well, one thing led to the other. And I think, yes, we could have maybe been more than distant relatives. Then, yes, so I learned a lot about these people. And it really made me think of the fact that we are fortunate to be 4 generations of interracial marriages and love. Really, this is a story of love, because my grandmother actually left Cuba for my grandfather. My other grandmother actually left Scotland and went to China, and my mother sat on Daddy's knee. So, or does that make it 3? Anyway, I think I could read you some more, but I think those of you who may have the book, I see many of, my little sister, the same one who told me, and what does this have to do with food? She told me, make sure you tell them to buy your book. But I thought that was rather crass. But anyway, About the book too, we had some very funny times. I had this wonderful team of mother and daughter actually doing the photography. And the first thing is I had a big fight with the stylist because I said, we're going to eat all the dishes in the book. I'll cook them, we eat them. She said, no, no, no. You do not eat recipes that you're shooting. I said, yes, yes, yes. I am not buying lobster and you're not eating it. So the thing is, with the book, the only advice I have is follow your vision, but try to assemble a really good team, and maybe you should listen to them. Then there are a few aspects of my childhood that I write about in the book. Wendy mentioned one of them, so maybe I should do a short paragraph on another one. Let me see if I can find it. All of us grew up enjoying the beauty of Jamaica as children, and we were lucky enough to go on these trips to the country. And it was on those trips that, well, I guess we experienced some delicious food, from Jamaica, rural food a lot, and also had time to run around and do things like catch crabs. In the 70s, my family spent many summer holidays in Bluefields, a small fishing village on the southwestern coast of Jamaica. As the car sped through the scenic tropical countryside and through small villages along the coast, we'd stop and sample roadside offerings such as small bags of pepper shrimp with their heads and shells on. They call them swims in Jamaica. And bunches of guineps. Summer was guinep and mango and ackee and avocado season. We consumed numerous varieties of mangoes. Their names sounded like horses in a range track. Julie, Lord Nelson, Blackie Stringy, East Indian, Sweetie Come Brush Me, Bombay, Number 11. I recall my mother telling us that Number 11 was good to eat in the sea because you could get the mess of the juice all over you and take the stringy stuff out of your teeth. Each day, the local fishermen would bring in their catch of fresh fish and lobster in their canoes and sell them on the beach. Lobster tails grilled with lime butter, oh my goodness. And in the afternoons, we'd go for drives to towns like Savannah, Lamar, and get freshly baked hardo bread from the local bakery. My sister and I would sit on those breads all the way home to keep them warm and then eat them with guava jelly and peanut butter. Every afternoon it would pour with rain, and then miraculously the sun would come out. We'd go for these leisurely walks with our parents through the hills, up through the country roads lined with pimento trees. I remember the aroma of the allspice permeating the air. We enjoyed the simple pleasures of rural life, such as going crabbing in the night along the main road with flashlight and crocus bag. And we learned to pick up crabs by the back so that the claws wouldn't pinch you. Those crab backs with the seasoning and the breadcrumbs and the slices of avocado was worth all the effort. These were the idyllic summers of my childhood. I want to close by saying that not only is it this experience was very serendipitous, but of coming here, my sister Leslie, who edited the book, ran into Mitch randomly over a cup of coffee, Michelle. And she graciously, thankfully, showed him my book, and he seemed to like it. So that's one of the reasons I'm here tonight. My mother loved this store. She used to bring us here in the 1980s. When I was going to mention that tonight, oh God, that's really dating me, but when I was going to mention it tonight, we weren't sure if Books and Books were really around or this was a figment of my imagination. Sure enough, it actually was, and I do have memories of coming here. As I said, Auntie Linda was very dear to me. And after the book came out last year, this time, I went up to New York and I did a launching of the book there. And when they called me about doing this reading, they said, well, we have a few dates. And I said, okay, the 26th sounds good. It's actually Auntie Linda's birthday. It was Auntie Linda's birthday last time I was in New York, and it's Auntie Linda's birthday today. So happy birthday, Auntie Lynn. And as I said about my mom, and as I said, we're going to visit my Chinese relatives. This book is not made up. It's actually my heart. It is, every word is true. And there am I getting emotional again. So, and what does this have to do with food? Well, just about everything. It has everything to do with food. So thank you very much for coming. Thank you, Wendy, for that lovely talk. And I really appreciate everybody, all my family and friends coming tonight. And yes, I encourage you to write books, because I think it's important to bear witness to our past, to leave some kind of legacy of the history and what we experienced. And I think it's also important for our culture and our country to be preserved. And yes, we are all different. I am definitely can't run, not like Bolt. I definitely, I did inhale, I have to say. And I do love Bob Marley and probably know all his songs by heart. But I am completely different to Bob Marley, and every one of you here are too. So write it down, record it for posterity. And thank you again, and love you all. And any questions? So, thank you.
What's your favorite recipe of all of them? Pick one.
Yeah, I knew that was coming. Well, I have to say the jajangmyeon is one of them. We have that on Christmas Eve. So irreverent, but that's what we eat. I love my grandmother's Cuban black beans and filet steak. I absolutely adore filet steak. Shouldn't really, but I do. I happen to like my coconut pie. I was boasting to say I made it up, but I did. I think I made it up. We actually eat those recipes every week. I'm trying to cut down on food because after this cookbook, I think I'm at least 20 pounds heavier. You know, I can't remember all of them. I enjoy the pate. I do like some of the vegetarian ones too. I absolutely love oxtail. I actually love stew peas. Yeah, I can't think of any food I don't love. So, yeah, fish in coconut sauce, coconut rundown. Oh, I forgot to tell you that, you know, Jamaican, is it vernacular, or is very, how should I say, rich and colorful. If you're endearing, if a man is trying to win the heart of a woman, he might come up to her and say, "Boy, I love you like cook food." A man after my own heart. He might, in fact, I think when my husband was actually dating me, he brought me a rather large mango. It was called a Nelson. I fell in love immediately. A Lord Nelson. And then, of course, there is the put it back, stagger back. Manish water, good for your daughter. And there are quite a few, because Jamaicans seem to believe in these aphrodisiacs. And then, you know, Mali, I'll cook cornmeal porridge and I'll share it with you. And I'll rub it on your belly like guava jelly. So, yes, our food is very much a part of our culture. And I'm very proud of Jamaican food. I think it has not been celebrated enough, and I think we are going to see quite a development in the culinary art in Jamaica. We have some very wonderful young people, and I hope that they will be much more risk-taking in actually using all the aspects of our culture and celebrating our food and our culinary tradition more. So that's one of my hopes. I'm part of the food movement there. I'm supposed to plug it. We do make gourmet sauces and delicious preserves, and we will be actually demoing them in New York on Sunday. And my philosophy about food is if you start with good ingredients, you might end up with a good dish. And you should saute everything. You should drink a lot of wine. Wine and butter make absolutely everything taste better. And yeah, fresh ingredients. There's nothing like Jamaican scallion thyme Scotch bonnet. Boy, I don't know. So tonight we have some tomato chutney with honey jerk patty. We have some pineapple salsa. We have some, I can't remember, help me Mary. We have some shrimp, my shrimp cocktail, which is my honey jerk sauce in a mayo sauce, but you don't have to use my jerk sauce. You can use anybody's jerk sauce. I made a pork tenderloin with a Blue Mountain coffee rub, and numerous, so many other things I can't remember. Oh, there. Oh, sorry. Yes, don't touch my heart. Yes.
Robin,
So.
is there anywhere in Florida right now that we can get your products?
No, not yet. But the gentleman we're going to New York with will hopefully remedy that. Anyway, not yet, but it's coming. It's coming. It's actually coming. And it's not a Jamaican soon come either. This is, yes. Anyway, good night and thank you.
Thanks, Robin. For those of you that are still watching online, don't forget you can give us a call. For those of you here, I'm sorry, I ate all the food in the back. So while you were watching, I was back there. So, really, it's delicious. You can take part in that. If you're watching online, give us a call. We'll get a book signed for you. For those of you here, as you rise, if you could fold your chairs and put them in the back, that would give us a lot of room to meet and greet with Robin. The books are for sale at the counter. She'll sign them right over here. Thank you all so much for coming.